Hola, hola, or rather, hello. How many people here speak English? Okay, almost everyone. How many here speak Spanish? Okay, most people, but I also see a couple people that don't. It's great to be here once again, another month, this time with more sun. It's great to see, summer rolling in. We're going to be able to enjoy the great terrace that we have right on your right, on my left, through that door, which, by the way, if you want to have conversations during the presentation, you can also go off to the side. But today, this month, we're here to talk about Bitcoin mining and the grid with one of the top people in the industry, honestly, in the Bitcoin mining industry, with Javier Hermosa. You can see him here smiling. You'll see more of him in a couple minutes. But first, of course, we gotta clean house, right, so to speak, and get something straight. We're not here to talk about anything else that is not Bitcoin, economics, finance, and politics, right? We are here to explore that intersection, to talk about Bitcoin, to talk about how it affects our world. We are not here to talk about trading. We're not here to talk about the price. Oh, is it up or is it down? I don't care. It's always going up and to the right, even when it's going down. I don't care. Why? Because inflation is always going up. So that's the only thing we care about. The rest doesn't matter. And we're also not here to talk about any other shitcoins, only Bitcoin. If anyone wants to talk about shitcoins here, like anything that isn't Bitcoin, like fiat or whatever other bullshit Bitcoin copycats there are, you can go somewhere else. Thank you very much. The door is back over there. Apart from that, we have a YouTube channel with already more than, I think, 14 meetups that we've been doing over the last year. All of them filmed. FYI, we're also filming this one. So if you want to maintain your privacy, just don't go in front of the camera. And for the questions at the end, we'll of course turn it off so that you can ask your questions in privacy, knowing that they're not going to be recorded. Nobody is going to laugh at your stupid question. Don't worry, it's not going to be recorded. Either way, I recommend you check it out. We have a lot of cool stuff. We have everything from book presentations with documentaries with Adrian Bernabeu. That was a couple, I think a year ago at this point. Yes, April last year. I also gave a presentation on the difference between Bitcoin and crypto and why I have such derogatory terms for all of these shitcoins. You can get an explainer there. Also an introduction to economics from my fellow co-founder of Barcelona Bitcoin Hub, Loscu. We also have Bitcoin and payments, Bitcoin treasury companies. They're not as hot anymore, but they still exist. You can check them out. Stuff like Bitcoin and politics, also Noster and individual sovereignty, decentralized networks. There's more than just Bitcoin. And yeah, more stuff. Very famous, Andrés Caramés came through. He's, let's say, a celebrity from Instagram, very aligned with our values. He was recently in the Lunaticoin podcast, also very good. We definitely recommend you guys checking it out. It's a bit long, 1 hour, but you're in the car, put it on, you're going somewhere, take a listen. It was quite an incredible event. Apart from that, we have put these QR codes for your ease of use. You can quickly scan either the YouTube channel to check out the videos, or you can scan the Telegram group chat where you can know more about what we do. So you can learn about our future events or what we're talking about every now and then. We comment the news, we comment different topics that come to mind or whatever we think about, right? It's a pretty nice place to talk about Bitcoin, and I repeat, only Bitcoin, and economics, finance, politics, philosophy surrounding Bitcoin. So I see still a couple phones up, no worries. I'll let you scan it in peace. Otherwise, after the event is over, yeah, you good?
Yeah, the QR for the YouTube channel opens QR code monkey.
That's a shame. I guess we'll have to update it. But yeah, you can just search Barcelona Bitcoin Hub on YouTube. Shouldn't miss, but thanks for the heads up. They let us down, goddamn. We'll have to make them obsolete with AI. I'll have to vibe code it on an afternoon. Anyway, no more phones. We keep going because Barcelona is full of activity. A lot of it, actually. In a week, we're actually going to have a meetup from the guys over at Barcelona Bitcoin Only, BBO, as they're also known. You also have Bitcoin Walk, Groovies, he's the guy who organizes it. Every now and then on a Saturday, he will announce that, hey guys, we're gonna get together, we're gonna just take a walk, do something more social, not so serious like this, you know, just take a walk, enjoy nature, be it on the mountain or being on the beach, and talk Bitcoin or lifestyle or health or food or whatever you want, or football. Bitcoiners also watch football sometimes, or soccer in European English, I guess. You also have BBH, of course, they have a meetup soon. They're, let's say, the original meetup here in Barcelona. They have been going on for 4 years, and they tend to do more cypherpunk, more hardcore, more technical style meetups. So if you feel like you want to get deeper down the rabbit hole of Bitcoin, we definitely invite you to go there. And don't worry, even if you don't understand what they talk about, you can still have a lot of fun, because we have had meetups like Bitcoin and quantum mechanics, where nobody understood anything, but everyone had a lot of fun. So we invite you to go either way. So if you see, oh, I don't know if I will understand that, don't worry, just go there. You're going to have a good time. We also have Trovadas Bitcoiners. This is a more, let's say, chaotic and sprawling version of what we do here. They have different nodes, different groups around Catalonia, from the smallest villages to, let's say, regional capitals like Lleida or Tarragona. They organize, let's say, sporadic events where you can drive to. Because, of course, it's even though Barcelona is the heart of Catalonia, there is still a lot of Catalonia outside of Barcelona, and they also deserve to get Bitcoinized, right? So, or for the ones that are already Bitcoinized, to get together and enjoy some time together. Apart from that, we also have BitDevs Barcelona. This is happening in la Universidad Autónoma de Barcelona, UAB, in Bellaterra. You can take the S1, I believe, S2, I believe, from Plaza Catalunya, and it will take you straight there to the college. And they usually have a more Socratic event type research. I don't know. The people do research on different very technical topics, and then they present them in a very technical manner. So it's the next step from BBO. That's really for nerds on software developers and stuff like that. But some people, some less technical people also go, and they seem to have a lot of fun. Definitely recommend it. I think it happens every Tuesday or Wednesday? Wednesday? Last Wednesday of every month. So you go to UAB, and yeah, you can have some fun or try to understand something, whatever they're talking about. And yeah, you can access all of these communities. This is a QR code, which I hope works. It should lead you, yes, thank you. It should lead you to a website created by Aleix, one of our long time community members, true OG. He's been around Barcelona organizing events since 2013, I believe. He even brought Antonopoulos back in 2015 or 16 to Barcelona, so pretty cool. And he organized the website, this website, where he puts all of the links together in one place. Even us, of course. Thankfully, we're also there. Wait, anyone scanning? I see phones. Okay. So yeah, you can see that Barcelona is quite active. I don't think there's any other city in the world that has this many Bitcoin events, community-driven meetups, social gatherings. So pretty cool to be in one of the most active cities in the world. But we're not just doing meetups here. We're also doing conferences. Do you want to talk more about that? No, I talk about it? Perfect. So, in a month and a bit, end of May, so May 29th and 30th, we have the pleasure of having a couple of Bitcoin OGs in Barcelona, of which we have 2 today. Not going to dox them, but I kind of already doxed. But they're organizing a conference on conference. So, it's a cypherpunk, very community-driven, technical, health, sovereignty conference, where there's going to be from panels to hands-on workshops to keynotes. So it's not just go there and get talked at, but also like, hey, participate, be part of the event, be part of the community, build something, try to take something home from the event. It's going to happen on a Friday and then on a Saturday. Instead of just staying indoors and talking all the time, they have decided to innovate. And I think from 3 p.m., we're going to be having a great barbecue somewhere around the area. You can scan the QR code, and with the BBH code, I believe lowercase or lowercase, perfect, you get a 10% discount. We don't receive any kickback from that, but we just give it to you, right? So enjoy the discount, support the event. They're great people. Second year running, and as you said on the last event, they made it so that nobody thought it was just an accident last time, right? So one time is an accident, twice is already, something solid. Yes. So I think everyone's already scanned it. I highly recommend going, attending, participating.
The agenda is quite interesting.
Yeah.
Good people.
The agenda, that's another thing. Last year, this was my highlight conference. I went to quite a couple of conferences last year. I think I went to like 12 conferences all over the world, from Kenya to Switzerland to the US. And this was the best one. Very small, very high signal. Anyone and everyone there was very focused and willing to participate and bringing something to the table. Not just there to like peddle bullshit or whatever. So I definitely highly recommend it. Like, I think it's $200 or $150 the ticket, whatever it is. Even if it was $1,000, I would still recommend going. It's the best money you're going to spend, in my opinion. But you do you, no financial advice. So furthermore, today we don't have her, but I'll try to make my best impression of Nuria. She usually presents the space that we're in, because the Barcelona Bitcoin Hub doesn't exist just in the ether. We exist in a space. This space is the Barcelona Finance Hub, as we can see right over on my right shoulder. And they have some sponsors that enable this place to exist. We're in the Barcelona Stock Exchange here, which has now been converted into a co-working space with five floors from the 5th to the 9th. Now we're on the 9th. And they're trying to create inside of this co-working space also a hub, a financial hub for Catalonia. Everything that has to do with finance, from insurance to property, real estate, and also, of course, banking and everything in between. They're trying to get it together in one place to get some sort of, let's say, Schelling point or economies of scale for information to flow and for things to flourish here. And we are a little part of that here, trying to do a Trojan horse of Bitcoin into the heart of the Catalonian Fiat Finance Center. So this is the space. We already have a couple pictures here. That's the terrace over there. We're going to enjoy it later on. And they have a finance summit event happening on the 6th and 7th. Last year was their first time. This year it's their second time, like with the BCC. I don't know if it's going to be as good as the BCC. It's definitely not going to be as Bitcoin as BCC. But still, I hear that it's pretty great, and that there's a more, let's say, institutional focus on finance and, overall. We're also helping them organize a couple Bitcoin and crypto adjacent, let's say, panels and talks, trying to bring some more Bitcoin into the scene. We'll let you know how that goes once it happens. Hopefully we can get some sort of like Bitcoin for newbies event in there, but TBD. And wait, everyone already scanned? Perfect, I don't see any phones. And yeah, I think they have a startup day and then they have a proper day. I don't remember exactly. Check out the link or come to the next event or watch the video from the last event. She explained it very well. And okay, again, another QR code, perfect. If anyone wants to scan that, feel free to it. And otherwise, this is a bit of the agenda. We have already gone through point number 1. We will now go through point number 2 and clarification on how point number 2 is going to work. Point number 2 is our great Javier Hermosa talking about Bitcoin mining, but he requested that it shouldn't just be a keynote. It shouldn't just be
Didn't request. I suggested.
True, correct. No, he's right. He suggested, and I agreed, that it shouldn't just be like a talk down on you. Oh yeah, this is how it works. It should be more a conversation between all of us. So right now we have one of the greatest experts in Bitcoin mining in the world. He's developed a couple software solutions outside of Bitcoin mining and one inside of Bitcoin mining, right?
The Bitcoin mining is
the most important one, and he's also now working on data centers and everything in between. He also enjoys the expertise of the entire Braiins team, so he definitely has gotten some very good insights into the mining industry. I also work in the mining industry, so I also try to, let's say, put my feedback or input into the conversation, but I invite you all to also ask questions. If something doesn't make sense, if you wonder if something works or doesn't work, or it could work this way or that way, or why did he explain it that way, please speak up, raise your hand, or just shout it. But why? Something like that. I don't care. Just do it, talk, and let's make this, let's say, a communal thing. Kind of like what's going to happen in Barcelona Cyphers conference. So, you can get here a little bit of a demo. Afterwards, we're going to have networking, drinks, and terracita over on the left side. I've already spoken about it a couple times because now with this sun, we definitely have to use it. And around quarter before 9, we're going to ask you to leave. And we have a couple options. Usually we go to Restaurant Oasis right over this on the other side of the street. But today we're actually going to go to a steakhouse. It's on the other side, not too far away. Don't worry, we're not going to make you walk too much. And going to continue the party there for whoever is still around, which usually we are quite a couple people. So yeah, that's kind of it. And we ask you to turn your phones into silence or airplane or whatever you feel comfortable with, but try to keep them off. And also try not to speak too much. It's a small space. And even a little fluster definitely, let's say, derails the conversation. So either speak loudly and ask questions or don't speak at all. I think that will be the rule for this presentation, for this meetup today. And with that, Javier, un aplauso.
Can you guys hear me if I speak without the microphone? Yeah? So I think I'd rather not use the microphone, because then it will be less of me being the authority here with the microphone and you guys, having to speak louder to be heard. Is that okay? Perfect. So thank you for the introduction. The topic of the presentation, I changed the presentation's name, making a reference to Michael Saylor, as you all probably know. There is no second best. Flexible load. In this case, guys, do you know what flexible load means? Does anybody know? I mean, let's establish a baseline here. How much do you know about the grids? Do you know, let's say, raise your hands who knows a lot about electric grids, how they work. Okay, we have one. You know how work. Okay, that's nice. So we have 3 people only that and medium knowledge of how the electric grid works. Nice, 1 person, no knowledge about how they work. Majority, because there's people that didn't raise their hands, so. Okay, so the concept of flexible load is such load that's connected to the grid that, as the name says, it's flexible. That means it can be turned off or turned on at discretion of either the operator or the grid operator, okay? So that's what we're going to talk about today, and we're going to have to introduce first how electric grids work and a couple of concepts. One very simple one, which is called inertia. We will go to 2 of the main reasons why Bitcoin mining has become a very important asset for electric grids, which were the Texas blackout in 2021. Have you guys heard of that? Yeah. And another event that probably you have not heard about, the 2025 blackout in Spain. No? Yeah? Somebody? I mean, I wasn't here. I was still living abroad. But yeah, it must have been scary for a lot of people. And actually, there were even attributed to the blackout loss of life. So those are types of events that we want to avoid in the future. And I'm going to make the case why Bitcoin mining is actually probably there's no second best flexible load as Bitcoin mining right now to actually help the grids to avoid situations like that one to happen again, okay? As Kenobi said, I'd like you guys, I mean, if you guys want to move forward, come closer, whatever, like, I really want you guys to intervene, and if there are concepts that you don't understand, that make no sense, just raise your hand, ask questions, okay? Let's not be just me here, like we say in Spanish, dandos la chapa, and just, like talking for 20 minutes or 30 minutes and, like, okay, so what was that about? Okay? Appreciate that. So, my journey first, I'm going to introduce myself. I'm Javier Hermosa Martin. I founded, oops, that should have been the other way around, whatever. I founded Crater, a Bitcoin mining software company in 2021. Why? Because I was dumb enough to invest in a company that was doing Bitcoin mining hosting in Siberia and Russia in 2019. And at that time, Bitcoin mining was, I mean, well, it's still pretty much the Wild West, but it was even worse back then. And this company was hosting miners from customers in Europe that when, you know, as the energy prices were higher and the rewards that you were getting from Bitcoin mining were not enough, they were looking for cheaper options in somewhere else. And one of the places where electricity was very cheap at that time was Russia. So this guy was Russian, and then he basically started with another Russian, a company in Berlin, in Germany, where I was living before. And I decided to invest in that company with a number of other investors. And it was like maybe 1.5 months after my investment, the company was almost bankrupt. So I wasn't the biggest investor in that round. I have to say that there were others that were worse off than myself. But I volunteered to work for the company to try to save the company from going bankrupt. And then I ended up 2020 working full-time for the company, basically managing the operation of hosting computers, like these Bitcoin mining computers in Siberia, not really speaking the language much, and like having to deal with a lot of Telegram channels or Telegram groups with support guys from Russia. It was a nightmare, as you can imagine. But I came to a realization, which was that the problem of this company and the problem of this industry is that at that time there was no cloud-based solution to manage these operations. So I decided to start Crater. Crater was a mining management solution. So imagine you have a warehouse full of these computers, right? You guys know how a Bitcoin mining farm works? Yeah?
Perhaps you can explain a little bit of.
Yeah, that's. I was gonna say, because I mean I see people when I ask this question, and some people do like this, but some other people don't even move their heads. So Bitcoin mining is basically there are these computers that are called ASICs that are just good at doing one thing, which is solving the mathematical problem that allows a miner, which is one of the actors inside the Bitcoin network, to solve a block. It's called, which means taking a number of the last transactions, putting them on a block and signing it cryptographically and getting a reward. These computers consume a lot of energy, that we know, right? And therefore, this becomes, as you try to scale up these type of operations, this become an industrial consumer of electricity, right? Just to establish how Bitcoin mining works in an industrial scale. So basically, because these farms might have, I mean, in the case of the company that I invested in, we had 120 customers along 3 different locations, and we were managing everything with Excel tables. So you couldn't know which machine belonged to whom, how much energy were they consuming, and you were actually charging these guys based on a kilowatt hour price. So it was a fucking mess, basically. So I decided to start Crater. As the journey had it, we started operating with some guys in Russia, or basically providing them the software. 2022 became the year that the energy management thing started, taking off. 2021 was the year of the Texas blackout, and that was actually one of the triggering points that led electric grids, especially in the US, to realize that Bitcoin mining was actually something. Yes, go ahead.
If I can add, it wasn't also the blackout, but also the China Bitcoin mining ban that made a lot of miners
move over to the US.
So it was kind of both, right? So
that's a very good point. That's actually a very good point. Yeah.
No, I think it was 2020 or 2021.
2021. It was 21. That's for sure. 2021 was the year that we had the 2 peaks, the 65 and 67K peaks, and in between was the drop because of the Chinese miners or China banned Bitcoin mining, and they basically a lot of the miners moved to the US, which basically made the US the hub for Bitcoin mining, and the electric grids there, some of them being deregulated markets like ERCOT and PJM. ERCOT is Texas, is the Electric Reliability Council of Texas, which is kind of like an island in itself. It has very little interconnections with other regions. And PJM, which is basically the northeast, center, east, northeast of the US, Pennsylvania, Ohio, New Jersey, etc. Those two specifically became kind of like centers for Bitcoin miners, and that became an opportunity for us at Crater to create or to integrate with companies that what they do is they basically receive the signal. So they're checking the status of the grid continuously, and when the grid operators give them a signal, they translate that signal into an API signal that our software will pick and will then do something to the miners. Normally turn them off. Why? Because if the demand is going up and you cannot turn power plants to supply generation to match that demand, you need to remove demand, right? Because removing demand is the same as generating. And that's where Bitcoin miners play a role. And that was the time, 2022, when we started, with energy management and in introducing that feature in our software. And then 2024, Crater got acquired by Braiins. And then I became basically head of energy and mining at Braiins because I was the person that had the most knowledge about energy markets at the company, thanks to the experience that I had acquired the previous years by working with these companies called curtailment service providers or QSCs, depending. It's a very complex world, but just understand that there are these companies that give you the signals and tell you when to shut down, and they pay you money for being available to them, basically. Okay, so that gives me some expertise in the area. If you have any questions so far, please shoot. No? All clear.
I do. So basically, in the US, in Spain, we have just one grid that is actually integrated with Portugal. So Portugal and Spain are kind of like one grid. But you're saying that in the US, there's like various of them?
There's a lot of them.
It's almost like 5 countries in one or 6 countries in
Correct.
one?
These organizations are called ISOs, Independent Systems Organizations. And there's actually an ISO in Europe for full Europe, which is NSOE. But then there are different TSOs, which are transmission systems organizations, that are basically the ones that control the grid inside certain regions, like Fingrid in Finland, Statnet in Norway, or Red Eléctrica Española in Spain, basically, which is tightly integrated with Portugal because it makes sense, because we're kind of like we're a peninsula, which is almost like an island.
That's
No,
the island, right?
it's an island. It's kind of an island, and actually that played a role when we get to that little known event to you guys, the blackout of 2025. We'll see how that might have played a role. So Braiins, what do we do at the company? Very quickly, Braiins Manager, which is the old Crater software that I created, which allows for fleet management and energy curtailment and a lot of other things, but let's not go into detail. Then we have Braiins OS, which is an operating system for those computers that actually mine the Bitcoin, specifically for computers of the manufacturer Bitmain. And then finally, we have Braiins Pool. So Braiins is a full vertical stack, right? Which gives us, this is not interesting for you guys so much, but yeah, it gives us a lot of, a lot of abilities to integrate with, complex configurations that other companies could not do. Won't get into details, but we can talk about it during the networking if you guys are interested. So we have a problem that the grid was built for a different world. What do I mean by that? What do you guys think I mean by that? What has changed in the last 20, 25 years? Even if you don't know how electric grids work, what has changed in the last 20, 25 years that has introduced changes in how we produce electricity?
Renewables.
Louder?
Renewables.
Right? So how are renewables? Does anybody know besides you? He's like the smart guy in class, I know. I love it because I was like that. No, not true. I was sitting on the back. No, and so now seriously, what do renewables introduce? Does anybody know what is different between renewables and other energy sources?
It's unstable.
It's intermittent. That's the better word. It's intermittent. It depends on the weather, so it changes like, oh, there's sun, lots of production, oh, there's no sun, no production. And you're not able to control it, right? Because if it's intermittent because it depends on the weather and not on a human being turning a knob, right? But there's another thing that's a bit more technical that renewables have that traditional sources do have. Inelastic?
Like you cannot get more sun or something like
That's a good point, but that kind of goes into the, like intermittency. I mean, you also could say you have a limit in your power plant, even if it's a coal power plant or a nuclear power plant. There's a maximum amount of megawatts that you can produce at any time, depending on the size of your turbines. And I'm giving you a couple of clues there to figure out what makes this different, like these renewables make them different from the other guys.
I don't know the word in English, but inertia.
Who said that?
But I don't know the name in English.
Inertia.
Inertia.
Inertia, exactly. So we have inertial generation sources like coal and gas that basically spin turbines. Then you have hydro, which spin a turbine. Then you have gas turbines that, crazy, they turn a turbine as well. And then you have nuclear, which actually make even bigger turbines turn. So all of these guys are spinning generation, they're so-called spinning generation, right? It means they're turning. And because they're turning and they have big mass and they're normally actually connected to flywheels. Do you guys know what a flywheel is? No. Not the technical guys, like the rest of the world. No, a flywheel, you drive cars, yeah? Or you've driven a car and you've had, like you've pressed the accelerator without having a gear in. You see that the engine revs up, but then it doesn't go down as fast as it went up. That's because even though you are not putting energy into the system, there's a flywheel that's actually connected to the clutch that actually lets the engine keep turning because it accumulates angular momentum. Well, it doesn't accumulate, it has angular momentum. And it depends on the speed at which it's turning and the mass, okay?
So it's basically like the laws of Newton, where like a thing that wants to keep moving stays moving, but instead of like linearly, it like spins, right?
Exactly.
Constantly, okay.
The thing, I mean, that's a good example. Like, okay, if a car crashes against a truck and the truck is moving slower, but the car is moving faster, why does the car, like they crash and then the truck kind of like takes the car with it? This is because of momentum, in this case, linear momentum. It's a consequence of mass and speed, basically. This is the same, but with turning things. So I use, and I'm laughing because I was discussing with Kenobi before, and he didn't like my analogy, but I like to use the bathtub analogy, okay? So the bathtub is the grid. And then you have a faucet, right? Where's the faucet? Okay, I'm gonna show it in the next, the tap or faucet is the generation part. And then there's a drain, which is the consumption. And normally, because electricity is consumed immediately, one of the things about energy or electric grids that makes it so fascinating for me is that you need to keep matching the consumption and the generation all the time. It's not like you can, you need to be predicting where it's going to be and then keep turning on generation or turning off consumption if you can, in order to keep that match, right? And that is kept matched because, as you know, this spinning generation is actually generating something, well, in this case, normally it's three-phase electricity. And as you know, it's alternating current. You know the classic band AC/DC? Yeah, right? Well, that's where the name comes from. It's like, that's why it's kind of like a bold is the symbol of the band. It's because it's a referral or a reference to electricity being either direct current or alternating current. Alternating current means that the electrons are flowing back and forth at a frequency, right? And that frequency is 50 hertz in Europe and 60 hertz in the US. Have you guys heard about that? I think so, no? Like it's something that it's known. Okay, well, it is very important to keep the frequency stable in an electric grid. Very important, because if you start deviating from that frequency, a lot of devices and a lot of assets that are connected to that grid will trip. They will disconnect because they want to avoid damage. So what you need normally in an electric grid is, I'm just going to change to this guy. So you have your bathtub, then you have the water level, which is the grid frequency. You have your consumption here and the faucet with generation. What do you guys think will happen if the bathtub is very small, when there's a change either in the flow of the generation, in the flow of the faucet, or in the flow of the drain. If the bathtub is very small, what will happen? Will the frequency change very quickly or very slowly?
Very quickly.
I'm covering the other part.
The teacher put the answers on the exam.
Exactly. It will change very quickly. If the bathtub, and that's why I make the analogy that the size of the bathtub is the amount of inertia you have in the grid, right?
So the more turbines you have spinning, the bigger the bathtub, so therefore it takes more change in more deviance.
It takes more time for a disturbance to have an effect in the grid. So if, for example, a big power plant disconnects that is producing a lot of flow, so all of a sudden you have this cut, and this is always the same size because the demand is not changing. The bigger the bathtub, the longer it will take for the level to actually change. Does that make sense? Yeah?
More or less.
More or less. Who said more or less?
Me.
It does make sense. So this is what is being represented here. So a power plant trips for whatever reason, and then if you have low grid inertia, then your frequency will go down very quickly. But if you have big inertia, maybe that bathtub should be a bit bigger, like would be, making it more graphical, but basically there's a slow frequency drop. Why do you want to have a slow frequency drop? Because then you have more time to either turn on more generation or turn off more demand, right? So we're gonna get there. I know this is a bit technical and people are like, where does he want to go? Easy guys, we're gonna get there. So now we have what happened in the last 20 years, which is a political push for renewables. No, everybody was panicking, we're gonna boil the oceans, we're all gonna die, so we need to produce renewables. Not gonna go into that discussion, but that happened and it's a fact. However, the problem is that solar and wind use inverters. They produce direct current and they need inverters, which are devices that convert the direct current into alternating current, but they're not spinning. So that means they don't have inertia, right? What happens when you don't have inertia?
Small bathtub? A small bathtub then.
A small bathtub, exactly. It's like what happens is that you have a small bathtub. Well, what happens is blackouts. And the one we're going to talk about first is the Texas blackout, which is slightly different to the blackout in Spain, but at the end of the day, it all boils down to the same issue. So in the case of Texas, Texas is a place where there's a lot of wind generation. Up to 23% at that time was wind generation. And you want to have that wind generation, being backed by other spinning generation that you can turn on whenever the wind is slowing down or stopping. The problem with Texas is that between February 13th and February 20th of 2021, the problem with Texas is that if you guys look at the map, Texas is right, there's a plain that connects Canada to Texas. There are no mountains. So this happens a lot in winter, that the polar vortex, which is like a region of the atmosphere that just keeps turning very fast around the North Pole with 700 kilometer per hour winds and minus 60, minus 70 degrees Celsius air, sometimes destabilizes, and plumes of cold air, they just go down from Canada and they can go all the way until Texas, and that's what happened at that time.
Before you keep going, quick question. But wind turns, right? It's wind turbines, they turn, right?
Yeah.
But you say they're inverter based, so they don't have inertia?
They don't have inertia. The inertia they have, each of the turbines, is very small, and it's actually producing DC that then goes to an inverter.
Oh, okay.
The technology of wind turbines is, I don't know, I know it's counterintuitive, but they actually have inverters.
So it's almost like the sun, the solar, where they just hit the electrons, and then that's why they have direct currents?
Yeah. Yeah, it's very similar.
It spins, it doesn't count
It doesn't
as
have
spinning.
inertia. It doesn't have
count
inertia.
as spinning.
It doesn't count as spinning. That's the thing. So, well, these are some numbers of what happened there. There were 246 deaths attributed to winter storm, $195 billion economic damage, and they were 5 minutes away from the total blackout. Why? Well, because as this is the time when the main issue happened. The wind stopped, a lot of the windmills or the wind generators were actually offline because of the cold. But then when they tried to turn on the combined cycle power plants, like the gas power plants, they couldn't because the pipes had frozen. Like there's a phenomenon as well that happens because the gas is combined or is mixed with water vapor, and that can form certain compounds. If I recall correctly, they're called hydrates that are actually, they freeze actually above water freezing temperature. So they clogged the pipelines. They were unable to repair them because all the roads were full of snow. So they couldn't even drive to the remote places. It was a disaster, perfect storm. And boom, they started trying to load shed and bring back, because they had already detected that the frequency was going down. But here, 1.5 gigawatt generation outage, 250 megawatts, 330 megawatts, an additional, they ordered like, please shed another 1 gigawatt of power.
What does load shedding mean?
Load shedding means asking demand to shut down.
Lights, factories.
Turn off.
Factories,
Okay.
turn off factories, turn off data centers, turn off anything that can be actually turned off, industries, etc. And they kept trying to do that, but then more generation started, tripping because the frequency was going down. Some of the generation started tripping and started going offline. And at some point, they were below the 59.4 hertz, which is actually very significant because if the frequency stays there for more than 9 minutes, the fact, like the normally power plants have the guideline of shutting down. They need to shut down, they trip. So they ordered another 3 gigawatts of load shed, and that's what started bringing up. They were around 5 minutes at 59.3 hertz, and they were saved by the bell from actually going into total blackout. Because if you can see here, this is the percentage of customers without power. They didn't go into full blackout, but you have areas that were 100%, which is this color around Houston, that were 100% without power. And then you had other areas that were, like a little bit more, a little bit less. But yeah, almost a complete disaster. And this was the amount of generation that went, the peaker generation that went offline during those days. So you had actually like the amount of gigawatts that ERCOT has is around 80 gigawatts, which is double of the Spanish electric grid. They had up to 50 gigawatts were offline. They were out because of frozen pipes, frozen equipment, wind turbines that couldn't turn on, etc. So what saved it? What did we say that saved them from a total blackout?
Turning off stuff.
The load shedding, right? That was what saved them, basically. And that was the lesson that they learned. They learned demand response load shedding saved the grid. And then some smart people there, working together with Bitcoin miners that were running or starting some of the biggest data centers that exist in the US right now, they started realizing, damn, this is actually an asset for us. Like, what makes it different? What makes Bitcoin mining, and we'll get to that in a second. Keep that question in mind. What makes Bitcoin mining a type of computing that's completely different than other types of computing that also can consume a lot of energy, right? Like other types of data centers. I'll leave you think about it, and then we will answer the question in a second. So that was the case of Texas. Then we have the Spanish blackout. What happened here was slightly different. At that time in Spain, there was almost 100% production of renewables in some regions, right? And a problem was detected. It wasn't so much of a frequency problem at the beginning, but a voltage problem. They started detecting spikes in voltage, which have to do with reactive power. It's complex engineering. I'm not going to get into that. But these voltage spikes that could be attributed to the lack of capacity of controlling reactive power by renewables were already present there. And at some point, a lot of power, 582 megawatts, 120 megawatts, and 1.1 gigawatts started, this paro means triggered, or they turned off, they disconnected. They disconnected from the grid bringing the frequency down. And it all started in the region, as you can see, where most of the generation is actually renewable. So you can actually, like this is, when it says generación convencional, that means conventional generation, or basically spinning generation. It was only 3% in Andalusia, it was 12% in Extremadura, it was 4% in Castilla-La Mancha. So all the southern part, which is actually where the disconnects started happening, was basically fully relying on renewables, right? So yeah, frequency oscillations detected across the Spanish grid, like 15 gigawatts basically dropped off the grid and took 26 hours to actually reconnect the whole grid. Because a black start, which is how it's called when you need to start the grid from zero, is very complicated, very complicated. So basically what happened is, as we said, solar disconnected, the frequency dropped, the generators further disconnected because of what I explained before of being for a long time below a certain threshold of frequency, and that led to going dark for 26 hours. This was the largest grid failure in Europe ever. Ever. Go Spain.
Spain first. Do you know what was the second one?
No, I haven't checked.
Okay.
I should check that.
There is no second best.
There's no second best. Spain. There is no second best.
I like that. Very good one. There's no second best
Yeah, I'm sorry.
grid failure.
I'm like shitcoin.
Fail.
Shitcoin grid failures.
So what was the root cause? So there was too much inverter-based generation, so there was no inertial generation at that time, right?
It was not the Russians nor aliens.
Well, I mean, could have been the Russians, could have been aliens, but the matter of the fact is that because there was so much non-inertial, the Russian hack or the alien invasion basically was successful. If you would have had a bigger bathtub,
It would have happened.
It will be resilient.
there would have been some resiliency in the grid. So, yeah, so insufficient inertia reserves basically was what, well, forget about grid following. Grid forming is like a type, like there are inverters that are grid following. Now new technologies come in to make renewables actually grid forming, meaning that they can actually act like a virtual spinning load or spinning generation. But yeah, basically, as you saw on the map, the high renewable areas were hit the hardest, were the first one to actually fall and create a cascade. You know, there's other factors like the interconnection with France was not working in the mode that it should have been working, or a mode that could have helped. Like there's different options, factors that played a role there. But we can
How do they do grid forming with capacitors?
I don't know exactly the details of the technology, but I know that the newer wind generation and solar generation has now inverters that are able to be grid forming. That's something.
Sort of capacitors answer, right?
I assume that it's going to be using capacitors, but the idea is that technology needs to be either rolled out to all the older power plants, and I mean, as we know in Spain, they're not making enough money to actually do anything else. Yeah. So even making them, like even upgrading them to become grid forming is, it's kind of a utopia. Like only newer power plants that are going to be built from now on are probably going to be grid forming or have grid forming capacities.
So this grid forming capacity is kind of like faking it in the sense of like, oh yeah, we are actually a spinning thing, so to speak. Right? Like we're inertial, so to speak.
Yeah.
Even though we're inverter, we're inertial.
It basically imitates the behavior of a spinning flywheel, basically, and like the presence of inertia. Instead of like tripping, which is what they do right now. So this was the canary in the coal mine, and we could say, like, I mean, I don't know if you guys know that Germany, the country where I used to live in the past, made a incredibly smart decision to turn off their nuclear power plants to save the world.
And turn on coal plants.
And exactly, and start importing massively South African coal to ramp up the coal power plants, but they're green and they're worried about CO2, but I don't understand any of that. Don't ask me, I'm not an expert.
And we had a war in Ukraine.
Yeah, with the gas, right?
They don't have enough gas.
They don't even, exactly. Better
Yeah.
gas and they'll lose some gas. Yeah.
So the idea is that there was some news end of last year, I think, where the Swedish Minister of Energy, a lady, was actually very criticizing vehemently Germany for shutting down the nuclear power plants because that was making showers, like literally a shower, to cost 4 euros to some of their citizens when the prices spike. Because if you have a spike to 800 euros per megawatt hour, if you do the transformation of that into kilowatt hour, and then you have, like an electric heater for your water at 2 kilowatts, and you shower for half an hour, that results in 4 euros. So she was actually right. That
basically, Germany turned off their nuclear power plants.
I was gonna get to that.
And then that increases the price of their energy?
Because Germany is not an island, it's connected to Poland that has a lot of nuclear, it's connected to Sweden that has a lot of nuclear and hydro, Finland with lots of hydro, nuclear, France, which is basically nuclear, most of it. And whenever there's a scarcity of generation in Germany, which happens a lot during so-called Dunkelflauten, which concept that you as a German speaker might know, which means like a dark silence, something like that. It's like a dark, when wind stops and there's no sun because there's this huge layer of clouds that cover Germany very often, you have no generation from renewables. So what they do is they pull from the neighboring countries, making the prices spike on those neighboring countries, right? Because the demand is enormous from Germany being the most populated country in Europe. So this all leads to realize, okay, maybe introducing so many renewables without thinking of the other side of the coin might not be the best idea. And that's where basically Bitcoin mining comes to the rescue. Question?
What's the deal with the nuclear in Spain? Are they shutting it up as well?
I hope not.
There is a plan to do it.
We're so smart that we are. We're very smart.
I think I don't really know exactly what the policy stance is because yeah, but not really, because Germany now, Merz is turning completely, like he's actually speaking out against the decision of shutting down nuclear generation. So, and Spain has an ideologically kind of like contrarian or opposite ideology to whatever the CDU in Germany is now doing. So I'm not sure if it's going to be following what Germany does, but I hope that they don't close Almaraz, which is one of the biggest nuclear power plants in Spain. It would be a disaster, and it would make this problem that we have just described, it would exacerbate that problem enormously. So
it is supposed to be closed in 2028.
But they're actually collecting signatures to avoid that.
The plan is there.
I know, the plan is there, but I mean, yeah. I hope that they, plans can change. You can book another flight. You can just stay on holiday a couple more days.
So when are we getting you in front of Pedro Sanchez to tell him about all this?
Well, that's actually the idea. That's actually the idea for the Free Energy Summit in Lisbon on the 15th of May. There's going to be a lot of politicians from Portugal, and I hope that they will bring some also from Spain to actually talk about these topics. And I will be doing an extended version of this presentation, probably a bit less technical, more into the Bitcoin mining, which is probably what they don't understand.
Monkey brain, right, for the politicians.
Yeah, but basically to help, I think it wasn't too technical. Is it being too technical for people that?
Too technical, not too technical.
No, well, there's somebody with a face there. You said yes, but she said like, So, not to convince.
Feel free to ask questions.
Yeah, should.
We
like,
don't
I mean,
monopoly, right? You can also ask.
if there's anything that is not understood, anyway. Now we get to the topic, Bitcoin mining. Why is it the best flexible load? You remember the question that I asked before. What makes Bitcoin mining different compute or a different type of compute than, for example, Amazon data center, like the AWS classic data center? What's the difference there?
Can be switched off?
Nice! It is an interruptible computing resource, and you can turn it off whenever you want without a consequence, because if you turn off an AWS data center when you're connected via SSH to your VPS, sucks. Because
I mean, it happened where like they failed for something, and then the whole Cloudflare infrastructure in the US didn't work, and people couldn't use their Ring cameras or get into their house, or their home thing interface didn't work, or their cars wouldn't turn on because Amazon was shut off because they made a mistake and some of their data centers shut off, I think.
And that's exactly what doesn't happen with Bitcoin mining. Bitcoin mining can be turned off and it has no consequence. Basically, you're just not consuming energy and you're not mining Bitcoin. That's all.
One is high availability.
Exactly.
business continuity, and the other is just
The other is just, shut down whenever you want, right? But there are other advantages. One is that it is very low capex compared to the alternative that a lot of people might be thinking about. Is like, hey, why didn't he mention batteries? Like, what about BESS, which is not bullshit, but battery energy storage systems? That is a great question. Low capex. Batteries cost a lot of money per megawatt. And Bitcoin mining, you can just basically deploy older generation miners. If your goal is just to participate in demand response program, which is these programs that the grid tells you, hey, shut down or turn on, turn off whenever they want, you can just do that for a fraction of battery cost. Then it is very fast to deploy, unlike a power plant, because as I said before, and I hope that was clear, generation is equal to the inverse of consumption. If that makes sense. So, I got you confused there, huh?
Yes.
Bit of math. The inverse, exactly. So
2 + 2 = 4. Stop.
It means that the equivalent of generation is to reduce consumption. Generate is exactly the same as the inverse of consumption.
If you need to turn on energy,
You can just turn off you might as well turn off consumption,
Okay.
which is why instead of building a power plant, or in the meantime while new power plants are built, then you can just deploy Bitcoin mining in weeks. I mean, the weeks is a bit is a bit optimistic, because I'm deploying Bitcoin mining data centers right now and it's not weeks. But yeah, that has other factors as well that play a role. And then you have another advantage, which is that you can collocate it behind the meter. That's what BTM means. BTM means behind the meter. That means that you have the grid, you have a meter, and then you have your generation, which is behind the meter, right? So you can place your Bitcoin miners next to the generation, not after the meter, but behind the meter. And then you can consume the excess energy that power plant. We were talking about it with Rafa a moment ago. And she's like, okay, so I need to create peaker plants, for example. Peaker plants are power plants that only turn on when there's a peak in price or in demand, right? So what do I do with them the rest of the time? Mine Bitcoin. So if the price is too low, just mine Bitcoin and monetize that asset. You can actually do it at a lower, like a lower performance scale. And whenever the price of electricity is higher and you need to actually you want to turn it off to make that money and to help the grid, just turn it on, disconnect the Bitcoin mining, and then just, ramp up the generation. And basically say it doesn't need to be with renewables, which is what a lot of people, think about when behind the meter, just using whenever there's too much generation. No, you can use that with gas generation. You can do that with any kind of peaker power plant as well.
Buyer of last resort.
Correct. Bitcoin mining is a buyer of last resort. And then all of that you can do while being a, demand response program participant. So you're basically generating revenue when you're online because you're mining Bitcoin, but when you go offline is because the grid told you to turn off and the grid is paying you for being off, which is great because then, it's like making money all the time. So how did this get validated? Well, the guys at ERCOT, after their blackout, they actually ran a study. They published a paper, and they realized that Bitcoin mining improves grid stability. So they did a study about Winter Storm Elliott already in December 2022, when they had already introduced a lot more megawatts or even gigawatts of Bitcoin mining in the grid. And they saw that miners curtailed 1.4 gigawatt in response to price. They didn't even need a signal. They didn't even need a signal from demand response programs, which are separate from price. Please, this is, emergency turn off. No, they saw the price spiking. There's something that, I'm building a solution at Braiins that forecasts the price, for example, and will, tell Bitcoin miners to shut down in advance, or will know when the price is going to be about your break-even price and just shut down. They did that and they saved the grid again. The solar eclipse of 2024 also meant that 1.3 gigawatts turned off during the eclipse in response to the increased demands and lower generation and increasing prices. So, and the beauty of Bitcoin mining is that it can respond very fast. It has sub-minute response time if you're using something like Braiins Manager, the software that I created and that now, Braiins has developed into an incredible tool. by using, these API signals that those companies will send you that are connected to the grid, and they will tell you, okay, shut down because the grid is going, into an emergency. So yeah, Bitcoin mining is basically a demand response participant at scale. This is what happened during that winter storm Elliott. Like basically, you can see the amount of megawatts coming from large loads that basically started shutting down already before the price. And we're talking about $3,000 of peak price
Per
megawatt hour. Yeah.
Given that it's usually at 15 or 20?
That's $30 per kilowatt hour. Yeah, it's a lot of money. So they saw that in advance and they were like, okay, we're gonna start shutting down slowly, and they basically turned off. And yeah, RRS is one of these ancillary services or demand response programs that send you that emergency signal. But yeah, they didn't really need it because the system price, they turn on again when the price went down to a normal price, and then when it started spiking again, they turn off again. And they basically, that's how there's not even the need of an external. The market basically, like the energy market itself, not the ancillary services market, regulates the grid in itself.
So price is the signal, basically.
Price is the signal, exactly. Yeah, yeah. So yeah, that's and this is the example of the solar eclipse, where large load responses basically did the same. They had basically that must have been at that time the strike price of Bitcoin mining, and they started again shutting down as the prices started spiking, and then went up again. And this is part of that study. It's a longer study, but it basically came to confirm that Bitcoin mining is actually a great friend of the grid. Actually, probably the best asset that the grid could use. And this is a message, or will be a message hopefully at that conference and in the future for Spanish authorities to actually realize that Bitcoin mining is not just burning energy. It's actually monetizing stranded energy and basically stabilizing the grid. And now there's a little piece that I've been also kind of like working on and giving a thought about, which is like, it is predicted that we will need around 2 terawatts of new energy generation to fulfill the amount of demand that is coming from AI. Why? Because for a model, an AI model, to increase its intelligence, like its IQ, let's say, in a linear way, you need an exponential increase in computation, right? Which means that you're gonna have to increase the consumption also exponentially. So to reach to AGI, like it seems to be the goal for AI companies, we're gonna have to increase around, we're gonna have to find 2 terawatts of generation somewhere, which
2 terawatts is like 20 times the generation of Spain, more or less? 50 gigawatts?
no,
Gigawatts.
40 gigawatts is Spain, so it's like 50 times. No, 50 times, no.
40?
Yeah, 50 times.
So we just need to find 40 Spain's worth of energy. Nothing.
And that's going to happen, and there are ways that you can do that. You can do that with solar and battery. You can do that with nuclear power plants. There's many options and many ways to do that. You can use stranded energy in places like Canada or West Texas, areas where there's not a lot of demand. But there's a problem with connecting those AI loads to the grid, right? And this is something that is now being discussed in order to, because every time you want to connect to the grid, it's going to take you around 2 years to actually get your approval and a load study done. And that's something that a lot of companies cannot afford. And sometimes they will even get rejected because the grid in that region where they want to build their AI data center is not ready. So one of the things that has been or is being discussed, and I've been kind of like thinking about, is like, how can you actually combine Bitcoin mining batteries to actually make one of the problems, well, I mean, actually 2 of the problems. One of the problems is like the lack of flexibility for AI data centers because they need to consume energy continuously, but you can overbuild, let's say, and then be able to actually have a certain flexibility through Bitcoin mining. And then the other problem, which is compared to AI training, which is when you're training your model and the consumption is continuous, you have another problem, which is AI inference. It's changing very fast. It's like you send a thank you to the data center, and that's a spike in a few GPUs that are going to be spiking the computation and the consumption and then going down again. And that introduces a lot of harmonics in the grid. So a lot of grids are like, hey, I don't want any more AI load because this is actually breaking and damaging equipment connected to the grid, right? So one of the things that you can do is similarly to how you apply that to the grid, apply to a microgrid behind the meter with AI data centers using Bitcoin mining plus batteries to fill in the gaps, in demand and supply. So let's say, this is like an example that I built, where you want your 12 megawatts capacity to stay flat, but you're not going to be getting, because of inference, you're not going to be getting that consumption from AI all the time. So what you can basically do is just use miners, battery, and AI. So when you have no work for the AI, you're basically using the miners, which is in blue, and they're consuming most of the energy, most of the power. Then when AI starts getting, ramped up, then the batteries start discharging, compensating, your baseload stays. Then when the AI reaches the max load is ending, the Bitcoin mining, which is a bit slower to react than the batteries, will actually start decreasing its consumption. The batteries will go again to zero. And then as the AI load starts on continuous load, because they can spike slightly and then they go into continuous, then you have again the battery, in this case not discharging but charging, and the Bitcoin mining then compensating over time. So you can just keep your base load continuous by using a combination of AI. Yes?
From the point of view of mining, doesn't that screw your miners from turning them on and off?
You're not turning them on and off. Like that's the thing with Braiins, for example, you're just basically changing power targets granularly. So these power targets are basically stored already in the miner, and then you can change the consumption of the miner in a very dynamic way, which is relatively fast, not as fast as a battery, but fast enough that you can change it without damaging the miner.
So with the manager, you're saying instead of going at 30 terahashes, go 1 terahash.
Exactly. You don't even go for terahash, you go for the power consumption. Yeah, that's the idea. So yeah, there's no second best, guys.
So the idea is just to increase the base load that a country produces and then use the miners just to adapt the demand.
Exactly. So you need to, what a system like this would do is basically accelerate the load studies. You tell the grid, hey guys, I'm actually gonna build next to my AI data center, there's gonna be a Bitcoin mining data center, and that one is going to actually actually flexible. So let's say it's half of the capacity of the AI data center. That one is flexible, and that one actually I will use to keep the base load more or less continuous to avoid the harmonics that I spoke about that can damage equipment, in other parts of the grid, etc. And also it's flexible so you can control it as the grid, and then you will give me a faster approval because you have 300 megawatts out of like the 900 that you can just shut down whenever you want.
Yeah, and make the investment more feasible, because at the end of the day, you don't have to design to the peak, but to the average. But you have a last resource buyer that can buy,
You're basically using a service like similar to a battery, but the battery would be charging and discharging with the Bitcoin mining. Sometimes you might be able to sell to the grid when prices are high, etc. But with Bitcoin mining, you have this flexibility that is just whenever it's on, is actually, producing some revenue. And actually, even if it's less on because of the way computers work and being more efficient when they're consuming less of their nominal consumption, so when they're underclocked, if you guys know the term, then you basically have even a higher efficiency for each kilowatt hour or megawatt hour that you're using, because they're making more Bitcoin per unit energy.
And
So,
do you know if there is a plan to use a small modular reactor, something that has been approved in the United States, but I don't know if someone is using them or not.
Small modular reactors for Bitcoin mining.
Or at least to increase the base load of
The problem with, again, it was an interesting conference in San Francisco in November, right before Mining Disrupt, and I was talking to some guys that were very, very smart, it was called Type 1 as a reference to Kardashev scale. If you guys know the Kardashev scale, which is like, I mean, for people that are into science fiction and futurism, will ring the bell. It's about the capacity of a civilization to use energy. Like Type 0 is only on the planet, Type 1 is like the whole solar system, Type 2 is galactic level. That's why they're called Type 1, because they want to push, like to use solar energy mostly to for energy abundance. And these guys were saying that the problem is that with small modular reactors, like with anything related to nuclear, the regulation is so insane that it's going to take you years, even if it's a small modular reactor, to actually deploy that. If you need it now, the only thing that will work is solar plus batteries. And I'm not even a fan of solar plus batteries, but because of the other issues for the grid. But for something like this, like when it's like, okay, I need to deploy fast and I need this, this supply fast because there's a, different business model that I need to support with that energy, is the only way.
Before you keep going, un aplauso. And this was incredible because we already switched into Q&A. So we're just going to turn off the camera and keep going. So.